I'm Judy Shaw for NYSE Floor Talk. Joining me today is Fred Goff. He is the CEO of Jobcase. Fred, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Judy.
Fred, how would you describe Jobcase?
Jobcase is the only social media platform dedicated to empowering workers in this country. We have 25 million monthly active uniques, and it's a place where people really manage their work life and the whole future of work. And it's built around a community. So it's the tools and a community to help you find a job, get ahead in the job you have, or navigate anxiety you're having and the lack thereof, which seems to be a lot of what's happening today.
What types of companies and workers are you hearing from the most?
In terms of what types of workers, it's across the whole spectrum, Judy. We have 110 million registered members. 15% have college degrees of 4 degrees or more, but most of our members do not. It's the hourly workers, the frontline workers, a lot of the displacement that you've seen in the 22 million that's hit the headlines of unemployment rolls in the last month or so that are very active trying to navigate this kind of very anxious landscape. In terms of employers, we have very deep relationships with a lot of employers that are actively hiring right now, actually, whether it's Amazon or FedEx or UPS, a lot of the delivery companies, a lot of logistics and warehousing companies. They have been extremely active, as you probably are aware, in the last month and a half to get enough folks into their shops, kind of like a peak holiday season, if you will, to satisfy this increased demand. But certainly, the tremendous amount of our other employers, whether they're gigs like Uber or Lyft, or whether they're restaurants and hospitality and et cetera along that nature, are very quiet these days indeed.
Now, you mentioned the hourly workers. What do you believe is impacting them the most around COVID-19?
I think the first answer that comes to mind, Judy, is the uncertainty. There's uncertainty at how long this is. There's uncertainty about the process around the bailout package or unemployment, the uncertainty of whether you're going to get your own job back or whether you should be looking for another one. The thing that lands very specifically for hourly workers is uncertainty around benefits. I'm very pleased that in this moment, a lot of employers seem to have stepped up and actually performed with a great empathy towards their workers in this quarter. We hope that lasts after COVID, quite frankly. But we've seen people like Lowe's extend sick leave to hourly workers. That's a great move. We've seen home goods underneath the Target umbrella extend pay based on average hours worked in the last quarter, not just last week or two. That's really positive. But I think that the more tactical thing that has people concerned is benefits, because quite often hourly workers in frontline don't enjoy the kind of level of security in that regard that a lot of salaried employees typically have.
Right. How do brands value stakeholders as much as shareholders?
That's a great question, and I think it's a great opportunity. In September or so of last year, you had 181 CEOs talk about underneath the Business Roundtable, and Jamie Dimon heading it, that it's about stakeholders, not shareholders. I think a lot of folks were worried that those were words, not actions. And in fact, I think that now there's the opportunity of actually walking the walk, because we haven't seen it in the past. Even JP Morgan themselves, in the year that they talked about that, had $40 billion of shareholder buyback. But they could have taken just 20% of that and given $30,000 plus to every single employee as a windfall employee shareholder. That would have been, or a windfall bonus, that would have been an example of stakeholder, not just shareholder. In fact, Delta did that. They put a $1.6 billion windfall bonus to their employees on Valentine's Day of this year. And that, I think, is a great example of stakeholder, not shareholder. But there's more of that we see too. And we talked about the example of Target or Lowe's. In this moment, as we see people increase the living wage, as Target increased $2 to people working in their shop, as we see benefits get extended to contract workers, as well as temporary workers, as well as to hourly workers, those kind of moves, that's what we're talking about, I think, when we say stakeholders, not shareholders. And this empathy we're seeing about putting people first, which is just so critically important, as COVID accelerates a lot of things that are currently covered by the rubric of future of work, into the now of work. A lot of this empathy we're seeing the C-level suites and boardrooms bring towards our employees, we sure hope that it remains on the other side of this health crisis so that that becomes the new norm in how we're balancing stakeholders and shareholders in general.
Okay, and finally, how do you think companies need to respond now, and what should they consider for longevity post-COVID-19?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think similar to the things we talked about. I think if they think about elements about the future of work that's being accelerated on the other side of this, there is a tendency for AI-based automation, or even automation in general. It doesn't have to be artificial intelligence. We need to think about that as tasks, not jobs. We need to think about, as we move towards more fungible labor on-demand marketplaces, and a big shift on the other side of recessions is always towards 1099 or temporary workers, not W-2 or full-time. We need to think about extending benefit umbrellas to that larger landscape, not just full-time W-2 employees. I think that when we think about living wage issues, it's understandable that not every job in this country is going to be a living wage on day one, but moving towards better balance between shareholder value and worker value, like we've seen with wages be increased during this crisis, let's keep those wages up a little bit on the other side. And what's even more important is to make sure that we think about a path to upward mobility. We were talking with a very senior person in the HR department of Unilever just the other day, and they had this great statement. It was really heartwarming. He said, how can we call our frontline workers heroes today and not treat them like heroes 2 months from now? And he was talking about how we upskill, and how when someone leaves, that we have the ethics to understand that we need to get their skills good, whether they work for the same company or a different company. Those are all good tells. So I think automation that's about tasks, not jobs. I think pathways to living wage, and a little bit more balance about the money that we pay frontline workers and the benefits that we extend to a broader landscape. The last thing I'd say before we stop is the other thing that companies can do that's going to be really important, I think really important, on the other side of this crisis, is let's not make job requirements hurdles to extending out how many people can come in. This happened at the last recession, where job requirements started putting degrees in for jobs that don't really require degrees. And that became a hurdle that then limited a lot of access to a lot of groups of folks around this country that could do a great job for your companies. And so let's fight that urge to raise the hurdle on who we're going to accept as an application on the other side of this, because there's an awful lot of fantastic people that are able to be hired that might not have a college degree, that can do the job really, really well. Let's give them a shot too.
Great. Well, Fred, thank you so much for joining me on NYSE Floor Talk.
Thank you, Judy. Stay healthy, be good. Bye-bye.
You too.